We've got another episode of Drilling Deeper on tap for everybody today. I'm Kevin Yanik, Editor-in-Chief of Pitt and Quarry, and we're going to be talking about AGG1 2025. We've got a whole list of producers, manufacturers, and dealers who are going to be joining us on the show, and we'll introduce them here in a bit. But first, I should introduce my partner on Drilling Deeper, Jack Kopanski, Pitt and Quarry's managing editor.
That's me. Thanks, Kevin. Glad to be back in Cleveland. St. Louis was fun, but always happy to come back home.
Well, we come back home as we're shooting this one. It looks pretty nasty outside here in our downtown Cleveland office, but
May hear some thunder booms during this one, so
yeah,
apologies in advance.
Well, you heard some weird horns and buzzers going off at the show when we were filming some interviews down there, so I think you'll hear a little bit of interruption during our guest interviews today. But as Jack mentioned, we're back from St. Louis. That's where AGG1 was toward the end of March. It was I think we can call it a pretty successful AGG1, Jack. There are a lot of questions about St. Louis and where people are going to go, how many people are going to go, and coming out of it, I continue to kind of rave about the experience overall, and everyone kind of had a different sort of experience. But how would you characterize what you saw and felt down there?
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I think, like you said, there were definitely some sentiments, if we're being frank, some mostly negative sentiments about St. Louis, about the city going into AGG1, and there were a lot of questions, like you said, of who's going to attend, how many people are going to attend. But after being there for 4 days, 3 nights, I honestly think those were kind of way overblown, because there wasn't any time where I was worried about myself in St. Louis. It was honestly a pretty fun city, a lot of good food. We got to catch part of a Cardinals game, which was awesome, get down to Busch Stadium. And honestly, I was very, very pleasantly surprised with the show. Obviously, coming from back-to-back shows in Nashville, sort of a destination city, if you will, I think there is maybe naturally going to be a bit of a shift going from Nashville to a place like St. Louis. But I mean, throughout the show, there was never a time where I was like, man, this show is not great. I really enjoyed all 3 days of the show. There was a lot of good booth traffic at our booth. There was a lot of good variety of exhibitors. And honestly, I think the best part was the amount of space, because in talking with NSSGA after 22 leading into 24, that, they kind of knew going into 24 that it's like, we're going to have to grow with this show, because, they set a record attendance in 24 with almost 16,000 people. So they're like, we got to get bigger, because we're having to turn away exhibitors. We're putting them on wait lists, so we got to get bigger. And I think they did that tenfold with the America's Center Convention Complex. Very interesting layout. It was really cool having the dome on the other side, getting to see where
different.
Yeah, getting to see where the greatest show on turf was played. So, yeah, definitely a very unique experience. I enjoyed it. Honestly, I think I might like to get myself back to St. Louis away from work, sort of explore the city a little bit more if possible. So, yeah, all in all, just very, very pleased with how AGG1 went, even despite some of the, despite some of the sentiment beforehand. Yeah, very, very good show in my opinion.
Yeah, I think good overall assessment there, Jack. I think in recent years, maybe even post-COVID, trade shows have kind of changed in terms of how people go about them or who's attending them. I think years ago, and you probably hear these through conversations with people in the industry, Jack, but producers used to send people, in droves as a reward. They would go to Las Vegas, go to Con Expo, and maybe they would see the floor for a day. Maybe they're off doing Las Vegas type things for the other 2 or 3 or 4 days that they're there. But I think what we're starting to see now with shows, including a more focused one that's aggregates oriented and asphalt specific, like World of Asphalt and AGG1, is that you're getting decision makers going. So maybe you're not seeing 10 or 15 people from a company going, but you're seeing a more precise number of people going who are going with a game plan. They've got things they want to see in booths. They've got an agenda, things they're trying to accomplish at a show. They're not necessarily wandering around aimlessly, I suppose, to see the latest equipment and technology. I think that's part of the process too, but I just think the whole nature of how producers and probably people in business in general go about shows and how they send people to shows or not has changed. And again, just to reiterate what you were saying, I thought St. Louis was success. Whether you were at an AGG1 in Nashville, St. Louis, San Antonio, or Baltimore, if you're on the trade show floor, the vibe and what you could kind of capture and take away from this AGG1 2025 was was just as valuable, I would contend, than any other AG1 of the past.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the past AG1s, we were kind of pouring over some numbers going into this episode and kind of looking at some of the numbers from past AG1s, how it's fared. You go back to 2019 in Indianapolis, they set a then record with just over 10,000 people, 10,000 plus. Then you look at 2021, kind of scratch that one because that was virtual with everything going
That's
on
right.
with COVID, so kind of a unique experience, can kind of one off that one. Grew again in 2022 at 11,400, set another record in 2024 with 15,800, almost 16,000 attendees, and then took a bit of a hit this year, down about 4,000, down to 11,500 attendees, which again, like I had mentioned before, you have back-to-back years in a place like Nashville, burgeoning city, parties on Broadway, a lot to do around there. Not to say there's not a lot to do in St. Louis, but Nashville is sort of gaining this reputation as this go-to destination. I think something like that's to be expected. But again, you look at these numbers kind of in the long run since 2019, and really over the history of AG1, still the second highest attended show on record. So a bit of a drop from last year, yes, but still a very strongly attended show. And you mentioned sort of the dynamic of how companies are sending people. Not only is it some of those decision makers, but sort of looking ahead to one of the interviews we'll be playing, Dan Caine with Wingfield Scale mentioned that there are those decision makers, but what he was impressed with is that there's also the group of people that maybe aren't decision makers, but are directly reporting to or directly in contact with decision makers.
Influencers.
Exactly. And they're coming back and saying, listen, man, I saw XYZ on the show floor. This is some great stuff. We really need to check this out. Let's figure out a way to incorporate this. Let's figure out a way to do this. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the people that are pulling the trigger on some of these decisions, but you're also getting some of the people that are reporting back and saying, here's what I saw and here are some of the biggest takeaways. So like you said, an evolving landscape as far as trade show attendance goes. And I know we got 2 more years now till New Orleans, but I'm excited for that one just based on how this one went. So
that one could be crazy. It'll be interesting in 2027.
Bourbon Street in March is something. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
that's
I've
right.
never been. I'm only assuming, but
We'll find out here just in a couple of short years. But Jack and I, overall, again, we had a great positive experience, and we're gonna play some interviews here that we shot at our booth on the trade show floor. And overall, Jack, I listened to the ones that I conducted back, and it seemed like they were overall very positive. People had good experiences and took some things home with them. I guess let's walk through the 7 that we have on tap. We'll provide some notes for each, and then we'll kind of recap them before we play them for you. But first on tap, we're going to play an interview that Jack did with Jamie Jones of Capital Aggregates. Jamie's been on the show once or twice before, Jack. He's been to our roundtable. I know you sat down with him at AG1 24, I think, in Nashville.
Yes.
And so Jamie's based in Missouri, so interesting to hear from him on the top, I'm sure, in terms of what he expected or what he ultimately saw transpire there in St. Louis, as he's not that far away from St. Louis.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a unique, probably one of the more unique interviews. Obviously we kind of asked some similar questions to everyone. What do you think of the show? What kind of equipment and technology is sticking out? But I got to ask Jamie, I said, you're only a couple hours away. You guys are, in the same state. What does that mean? And he talked about it, and you'll hear him talk about it in the interview, is that he's able to bring more people, able to kind of divide and conquer a little bit, have different people kind of looking at different things, sort of maybe within their market or within their area of expertise. So definitely a unique experience. Like you said, Jamie's a veteran with us at this point. He's a good dude to talk to. So it was very cool to get a quote unquote local input from Jamie and the Capital Aggregate perspective. Yeah,
another regular you hear about or read about in the pages of Pit and Quarry is John Scepaniak from WD Scepaniak, and John's going to be his interview is going to play after Jamie's. He's based in Minnesota, contract crusher, and he talked about his show experience. Make fun of him at the top, but we always love having John on the show, and it was great to see him in St. Louis. And beyond John, Jack, we're going to play a dual interview that you did with with a producer and a dealer.
Yeah. First off, now that we've gotten John on a couple of times, we got to talk Brian into coming on, and
We'll get him.
We got to get that mustache on camera. That Raleigh fingers looking stash is a thing of beauty. But yeah, anywho, I was lucky enough to sit down with Thabiso Bolebano from Rogers Group, and Clement Cazalot from Machinery Partner. These guys are a hoot. You get these guys together, man. It is one, it's a lot of knowledge, but two, it's just a lot of fun. You know, these guys have obviously a very good working relationship, and it was a unique opportunity to hear or get sort of the producer input and view of a show, and then the dealer input and view of the show, to kind of saying, here's what I'm looking for as a producer, here's what a dealer might be looking for, kind of comparing and contrasting, and what is sticking out to each of them. Some similarities, some differences, but all in all, I think a very informative and just a strong interview and a strong look at what this show is able to provide, these two.
And beyond Thabiso and Clement, Jack, we've got 4 manufacturer interviews on tap. Fourth on our list today is Josh Swank from Philippi-Hagenbuch. He had a good experience in St. Louis, and he's going to share, what he saw, what he heard as he was there, and also at the NSSGA annual convention across the street. We've got behind him Ian Edwards of Major. Ian saw a lot of people on the show floor. He was hearing from producers about uncertainty a little bit, and I kind of pressed him on that, and I think that's something that I heard quite a bit, not just from Ian, but other producers, other manufacturers, because we're just getting at this weird time with tariffs and interest rates still being a big factor in terms of the ability or inability to do things out in the construction materials market, Jack. So, Ian's going to get into that a little bit, and so will Josh Swank before him. And then lastly, just bringing up the rear of our lineup today, we've got Dan Caine from Wingfield Scale and Nick Roseto of Dodge Industrial, whom you both sat down with.
Yeah, no, these were two good conversations. Like I mentioned at the top of the episode, Dan kind of provided a bit of perspective as far as what he was seeing from his booth. Again, the way that an AGG1 differs from a Con Expo as far as the type of attendees you see. Again, that mix of decision makers and non-decision makers, but again, sort of those influential people nonetheless. And then Nick, he just gave some overall really good insight about how the show's treating him, what some of the emerging equipment and tech that he was keeping an eye on at the show was. Two solid looks at the show, and I was grateful for them for stopping by the booth and getting able to sit down with them.
Okay, just to recap what you're about to hear, we've got 7 interviews, starting off with Jamie Jones. We got John Scepaniak beyond that. Third up, Thabiso Bolebano and Clem Cazalot sitting down together. Fourth, Josh Swank. Fifth, Ian Edwards. Sixth, Dan Caine. And seventh and last, Nick Roseto. So with that, Jack, let's hear what our industry leaders had to say.
Let's do it. We are joined by Jamie Jones, COO of Capital Aggregates. Jamie, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Exciting time here. We're here at AGG1, kind of right in your backyard, a couple hours away from Jeff City where you guys are headquartered. What's kind of what's your feel been about this year's show? Obviously, sort of being so close, new location after a couple years in Nashville. Just what's your vibe of the show been so far?
You know what? So far, so good. Honestly, I haven't got to see a whole lot of it. You run into a lot of friends, close by. I feel like the mining community is like such a tight-knit group. And you go to one of these events and you spend more time talking, like trying to get to event. Like, they have some great classes so far you've been to. NSSGA has been great, but just trying to get around. I haven't even seen everything that we've got to yet. So
yeah,
but so far I think it's been great. Ballpark Village was great last night. So I think it's been a success so far.
Fantastic. Yeah, we were kind of talking right before we went live here that with it being so close for you guys, brought a large contingent of Capital folks. That's got to be exciting when you're able to bring some more staff to, see a show like this and sort of be able to experience it more than maybe if you had to travel a bit farther.
Oh, absolutely. It's like it is a costly thing to go do it whenever you're going multiple states away, but going to St. Louis, it's like get some Airbnbs and put up some extra people in there, and they're getting to get to walk through this, get to see some of the vendors and stuff that they normally don't get to do, and then also take some of the classes. I think AGG1's always put on some really good classes with teaching sessions in it. So we're happy to be able to do it.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned obviously a big layout this time. I know that was a focus of NSSGA, sort of expanding the footprint from the Music City Center the last couple of years. Certainly seems they've done that and then some. So with some of the walking around, some of the exploring you guys have been doing, has there been anything that sort of caught your eye or anything that's really sort of stuck out to you at the show so far?
Again, I haven't walked through everything yet. Like this morning was my first time taking a run through here, but I've been running at a fast pace. I know our guys are split up, each looking for their own little component of what they're doing. Like we have some guys talking with the crusher guys. I'll tell you, like Chris Williams has been working with some people. We got the stuff out west in Las Vegas, trying to find something for water conservation. So dealing with some of the vendors, trying to look for other avenues to make better operations out there. And just some of our guys are more on the technical side of things. They're trying to look for like new drone technology and anything else in their space. So overall, I think we have people divvied up, all going in different directions, all trying to find something. You can't really find that in any other venue besides an AGG1 or a Con Expo.
We're here at AGG1 2025 in St. Louis, and we're at the Pit and Quarry booth with John Scepaniak of WD Scepaniak. John, always great to see you.
Yes, thanks for having me again.
The beard's looking good.
Yeah, it was just kind of, I took my driver's license picture and I was clean shaven, and I just kind of haven't got around to cleaning it up. So,
well, it's been a cold winter in Minnesota, I would imagine, right? So
yeah,
it's timely for that beard.
It's been brutal, and it's very fashionable for the season, but come June or July, I'll probably get rid of it.
Well, you got nothing. We're going too far on the mustaches and beards, but since we're going that route, I mean, yeah, your brother and you each got your own style with the Raleigh fingers on Brian, your brother.
Yeah, well, we weren't blessed with hair on our head past our late 20s, so we got to make something work.
Well, let's talk about AGG1. I'd love to do a beards and mustaches show with you, but yeah, we're sitting down on day one, and we're at America's Center Convention Complex, coming off of an AGG1 in Nashville. So a little bit of a different change of pace, different venue, different space and all. You've been here for a couple hours, I guess. John, tell us what you've seen, what you observed, and what you're hearing out there.
Yeah, show specific, the footprint of the venue is a lot larger than Nashville. So I think there's just a lot more going on here. It seems like it's a little bit more cavernous is maybe the word, but you have essentially 3 different areas to explore in. So, I've been here for a couple hours and still don't have everything just walked at a preliminary level, but no, it's been good so far. I think show turnout looks nice. Lots of people here, running into a lot of people that you really only see here because we're off at home doing our own things throughout the year. And this is a great show to reconnect. It has that scaled down feel as opposed to Con Expo, where it's just so vast and so much. Whereas this is a place where I feel like, me as a producer, other producers and manufacturers can really just kind of connect on neutral ground and have great discussions and get feedback on different things and ideas. It's been great so far.
It's so much more intimate than a Mine Expo or a Con Expo. Even for us, we've got a booth here in aisle 3200, and we can get to where we got to be in 5 minutes versus hiking half a mile. Yep, that much more convenient. And the fact that they've got the Edward R. Jones Dome over there, housing some exhibits is pretty unique and exciting for our industry. But as you're approaching an AGG1, John, I wonder how much time and thought do you put into game planning the show? Are you looking to meet with certain vendors? Are your dealers here? Are you scheduling meetings on the show floor or off? I guess what does a John Scepaniak do for an AGG1?
Yeah, I would say in the maybe months or weeks leading up, we have some key relationships that we want to make sure we tend to and spend time with those manufacturers and vendors. Obviously there's a lot of commitments and sometimes you're double booked, but you just make it happen. Like tonight, for example, I have a couple places I need to be, and I want to make a good, honest effort to be everywhere that I'm supposed to be and spend time with those relationships outside of our business because they are so critical to what we do. And really, when is the next chance we're going to get together? Same time next year. So it's really, you need to make it happen now, because when we're in the thick of it, when I'm in the thick of it doing our contracting business, the time to set aside really isn't there. And I feel like this is just a neutral, relaxed environment. There's really no agenda for myself or people we meet with, and you can cover a lot of ground conversationally. It is really nice. So how do I approach my daily agenda? I'm not a big planner by nature, which has been detrimental to myself professionally, but I like to just hit the ground running, get a feel for things, and that's really what we did. I had some things to tend to this morning with business back home, and then grabbed lunch on the way down here, and then just kind of been walking laps on the show floor, just reconnecting with people that I haven't seen in a while, and having good discussions. And tomorrow we'll probably get a little bit more granular. Once we've swept the venue and kind of seen where everything is positioned, I'll probably sit on the app a little bit tonight and do a little bit more strategic game planning. And then there's also the whole aspect of the education sessions. In years past, there too, there's almost so much to do and so much to see. I've actually leaned into getting the digital copies of those sessions and being able to kind of piecemeal them out and study them as needed throughout the year, because there too, you want to be in two places at once, and it's not always feasible. But all in all, I say this about AGG1, no matter where it is. I love how it's condensed down. It's specific to aggregates and asphalt, which is what we're doing. I love looking at big cranes and stuff like that at Expo, but it almost causes a distraction for me where I get a little bit too far off task. My own problem once again, but no, it's great. I really enjoy being at the AGG1 show.
So when it comes to equipment and technology on the show floor, John, have you found yourself over the years, not at all because it's day one here, maybe you found something, maybe you haven't, but do you find yourself unearthing a technology, a new vendor, something you hadn't seen before that you ultimately will implement into the business, discovered at an AGG1 or a Expo? Has it happened before for you? Or
there's oftentimes you'll see maybe a technology provider or a component manufacturer, and you maybe like to just look up close at some of their componentry and see how it's assembled or put together, as opposed to what we're already utilizing from a different manufacturer. Maybe pick up some tips and tricks, or maybe little things we can tweak on our own stuff, because we do a lot of internal repairs and manufacturing and modification for our own devices. Not that we're stealing trademark secrets or intellectual property, but really just kind of seeing how people are doing things. And this industry has always been a great petri dish for creativity and innovation, and it's just fun to come to these shows and kind of see what people are doing and innovating and perfecting things like idlers, perfect example. The technology in idlers is continuing to improve, so that's been fun to see, just for a good example. And then technology, there's almost endless softwares specified to whatever type of business you're doing. Really we enjoy looking at those and maybe how we can implement them within our business. And all the representatives have good information and knowledge on what they're providing, and you can get a lot better answers, I think, meeting with somebody face to face at their booth, as opposed to maybe emailing or doing a Zoom presentation, things like that. So it's just good if you're curious about something, you can get on the ground level and just talk to them about it.
All right, we are joined by Clement Cazalot and Thabiso Bolebano. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Clem is the CEO of Machinery Partner, and Thabiso is Area Production Manager in East Tennessee for Rogers Group. Gentlemen, thanks for taking a little time with us today.
Thanks for having us, Jack.
Absolutely. So obviously, we're here at AGG1, second day of the show, about halfway done. Just first things first, obviously a change of scenery this year, last couple of years in Nashville. Just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on AGG1 first and foremost this year. How's St. Louis been treating you guys?
I think the show is still good. I mean, it's AGG1 as we know it. It feels a little bit smaller this time than it was in St. Louis. I mean in Nashville in prior years, but some of it may have to do with the way the city is structured and also the space. I talked to a few vendors on the stadium side of the show who felt like they were a little bit tucked away from our side. People walked the main trade floor and didn't get to see the other side as much, or they're a little bit on the back side, hidden. So, but other than that, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll share the positive side of that. I feel that this is a show compared to the past few years, given the structure of the attendance, I get to go much deeper into the conversations than it used to. And there is less of a rush when everyone is the same hallway, same one location, so you're always catching the eye of someone. So that has been actually a really good show from that perspective, to go really deep and create intimacy and true business discussion. Well, usually you would just exchange a business card.
100%. So and sort of playing off that, obviously being a dealer and a producer, two sort of different viewpoints here of this show. I'm curious, with the expanded footprint, with some of those deeper conversations, are there any tech or equipment developments that are sort of catching your guys' eye, that are really sticking out, that have emerged at this show?
Do you want to speak on the producer side and I'll speak on the dealer side?
Yeah, start on the dealer side from what you see so far.
I mean, Machinery Partner is awesome, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm kidding. No. So the one thing that I like at AGG1 merging with world of asphalt is you do have more discussion on where the output goes, and that actually bleeds on both sides, since a lot of the producer actually play on both sides of the equation. So that's richer discussion than just, hey, here's a new type of crushing plant, so that's fantastic. But like connecting the aggregate equipment to the downstream usage had some more context to it. So I'm seeing two key trends. One that is incremental innovation, and the aggregate industry is a poor sibling of the mining world. Us moving 1 million ton is a big deal in a year. In the mining world, you move that in a day. So what I see happening is more and more of the mining innovation and the way the chambers are structured, everything that is bleeding into it, the way sensors are being put so that you can actually start automating more and better understanding what's on the production. So that was one key trend. Bleed more and more because of the market is full of inventory on the dealer side. You actually see more of this gradual innovation instead of strikingly new innovation. And then the big trend that I see that I hadn't heard in previous AGG1 is a rise of discussion on how AI is impacting it, but not AI as a gimmicky ChatGPT, but more on a precision blasting, a lot on the how does on the support service side, a lot on the dealer side, how actually that type of tools is increasing the quality of the supports, and on the manufacturing side a little bit on how that helps them rationalize what they put in a machine so there is better serviceability. So these are the two key trends, a little bit of the incremental innovation coming from mining, and on the other side the peripheral, better blasting, precision blasting, using computer vision, using other elements that actually help our overall operations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think on the producer side, I mean, to us, a lot of conversations that we're having is around how do we make sure that we continue to maximize productivity without incremental capital expenditure, of course, right? And then you're seeing a lot more positive reach in connectivity, mine connectivity, right? How, from belt scales to loader scales, all that information combined to plant automation and real-time sensor information being fed back to machines, and basically trying to find tools that maximize what our operators are able to achieve in a way that keeps them engaged and feel like they are part of that narrative and the story. Right? For a lot of older generations, more seasoned generations in the industry, that can be a little bit scary, but when you make it interactive, it seems like the buy-in is a little bit easier to get to.
Yeah, 100%.
Actually, that makes me realize one of the things that I see this year, I mean, that has been a trend over the past few years. Yes, you have the big ones making big announcements, the McLaren of the world, the Metso, but actually, I see more and more at AGG1 also the rise of challenger manufacturers that are actually telling a different story on specialty equipment. You don't come to a show to say the same, pardon my French, a shit over and over. The reality is our industry moves slowly, not because it's because we don't want to move fast. It's because the rate of planning on the large and small production, and we were speaking together earlier about that. There are actually new players coming with hyper compact or interesting design, and they are not necessarily the big names, and they make a name for themselves or targeting a specific type of use case. And so that's what is great. Complete of the Lord, EccoVerse, fantastic. Is aggregating a lot of different pieces of equipment, and then even on the part side, when you see what Beltec is doing and others, where they take even what the playbook of a manufacturer and bring it even further. So that's what is cool actually as a show, and what I would encourage everyone coming at AGG1 and others is make a conscious effort to actually walk towards the lesser known brand, because that's where you get a pulse of what's coming around the corner.
Right, and we were talking about this, about these challenger manufacturers, as you call them, and one of the things that I see as more and more of these brands come up and the product lines come up is now competition becomes a little bit more difficult with smaller players coming up, because the barrier to entry isn't so high anymore, right? When you go buy X manufacturer's machine that's $1 million, that's quite a hefty capital investment up front. But some of these manufacturers are coming in with machines that are a little bit less than that, so it doesn't take much for a guy to go start up his side and start getting rock in the market,
Yeah.
So it's exciting to see that, interesting in a way, because obviously it means that bigger producers also have to get more and more creative in the way that we reach the market at the cheapest cost we absolutely can.
And now a word from today's sponsor, ASFab. The people at ASFab, the sponsor of today's podcast, are the experts in fines recovery systems with over 65 years of experience. From custom process design to water reclamation and frac sand solutions, ASFab delivers innovation and quality. Visit asfab.com, that's AZFAB.com, to learn more and turn industry challenges into opportunities. Thank you to ASFab.
We're back at AGG1, Aggregates Academy and Expo in St. Louis, and I've got Josh Swank in the booth from Philippi-Hagenbuch. Josh, great to see you.
Kevin, you as well.
How has your show been? I mean, we're on day 3. It's the final day of the show. What'd you take away from this 3-day event in St. Louis?
Wow, it's been really good. Coming into St. Louis, we weren't sure what the traffic would be like. We don't have a historic perspective of other shows being in St. Louis, whereas we knew Nashville is going to get a solid turnout, but we weren't sure about this city. It's been really good. We have seen a tremendous number of clients from around the country. We had people come to the show specifically to meet with us at our company. So the show was a catalyst and just a nice byproduct that we were here and we got to meet with them. Met multiple additional prospects that we had met before. So it's been a solid show.
That's one of the values I could argue for an AGG1. When they move it around from San Antonio to St. Louis to Baltimore. I mean, you're catching that region, like that state and the surrounding states. Did you see that this time around too?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's who's within driving distance. Us being out of Peoria, we were only 2 hours, 20 minutes away, so it's very easy for us to get here to bring a larger team. But we're seeing people from Missouri, Kansas, and those areas that don't always often come to the AGG1 show, so you're going to pull a different crowd. And it's nice that AGG1 does move around year to year on the non-Con Expo years.
What sentiment were you hearing from customers, from producers in your booth this week, Josh? I know it's kind of an interesting time here. We're getting into the second quarter here pretty soon. What uncertainty, I know we were talking offline before the camera started, but uncertainty I feel like is kind of where we are at this moment in time. Maybe we'll get some answers to questions sooner than later, but I guess what's the mood out there among your customers?
There's optimism and there's frustration. At the NSSGA event, we heard that only 30% of the highway funding bill has been spent, but we only have 2 years left. So they're not spending the money in proportionally year to year. So the producers, they beefed up on their equipment, they prepared, but the jobs aren't there. So they're optimistic because the money's there. So the projects just have to be greenlit so they can produce, get aggregates out there, improve our roads, build bridges, do those other infrastructure projects. So I have heard optimism, but it's a stalled optimism because there's just that little bit of frustration that they don't know when things are going to move forward. They're certainly not moving forward as quickly as people had anticipated.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what Ward Nye, Martin Marietta, had to say on that CEO panel where Danette Swank served alongside him, but Ward was talking about the public markets having to maybe carry the day for a while here because of the uncertainty in the private markets and what's happening with interest rates and those sorts of things. So I think you're right. There probably is optimism still that there's opportunity ahead with the public sector because the dollars are there. I would anticipate. I mean, I'm not an expert on this front, but those dollars got to come forward. There's still 70% remaining. And there's 2 years of a 5-year bill to go. So let's get going there to kind of get things moving along.
Well, that's exactly the truth. We need the public projects and funding because the interest rates are too high for developers to be building multifamily housing. The numbers aren't there. The individual housing startups, they're happening in specific parts of the country, but not widespread. And then with the unusual spot we're in right now, that is really hard to forecast is how these tariffs are going to impact growth within the United States. It could be amazing, or it could be a challenge. So we don't know yet. We're in a gray area or a new frontier until we figure this out. So there is optimism, but a little bit of uncertainty.
With the tariffs, and if you want to get into it, Josh, I mean, go for it. But until we get some answers, as an equipment manufacturer, what are you doing? I mean, nothing really. You can't make a reaction until something definitively happens, right?
It's a big frustration because we have clients outside of the United States, and they're asking me what the equipment's going to cost. Well, I can give them that price, but I have no idea what taxes are going to be levied on them, what tariffs. So as a manufacturer, there's just so much unknown from a taxation standpoint. Things I look at are the cost of our raw materials, though. Steel so far has not increased greatly. It's increased a little bit, not nearly as much as the 2018 to 2020 timeframe. But I do anticipate steel increasing in price, and that will just drive inflation, which creates, additional requirements from a payroll standpoint, which then just increases all expenses for everyone.
How would you characterize your feelings as you look at the aggregate industry specifically, Josh, for the remainder of 2025? And I know we're still rather early into this year, but are you starting to get a feel for what 26 might look like at this point?
From our standpoint, we're bullish. We have a very strong demand from our client base. From the people I have, the other manufacturers and such that are here at AGG1, I have heard some people saying it's a good start to the year, but nothing that's breaking the books. We're a little different. We have extreme demand right now. It's been in a very, very good year, and we see that continuing on until at least through the first quarter of next year. So I'm happy with where it's at, but I also do think there's still room for growth.
All right, well, we're at the AGG1 Aggregates Academy and Expo in St. Louis, and we've got with us in the booth once again Ian Edwards, the 2025 version of Ian at the AGG1 show. So great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks again for having us. We enjoy having these conversations with you, and we're happy to be here at another AGG1. So it's nice to be out with everyone again.
It's hard to believe we're at AGG1 again. I mean, we're in Nashville 12 months ago. We're going to be at ConExpo in Las Vegas 12 months from now. So what's your experience thus far? I mean, we've had some pretty successful shows in Nashville, and day two here, as we're sitting in the 3,200 aisle, it seems like there's still pretty good traffic. What have you seen in your part of the show floor, Ian?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we've seen quite a few people. Yesterday was a very good day. This morning was very strong as well. I think people are out. They're looking to see what's going on in our industry. We've had a lot of changes. And more importantly, I think unfortunately, there seems to be a lot of instability going on right now, right? So I think people want to get out and meet with their manufacturers, their vendors, their suppliers, and just say, hey, what's going on? What's going on in your world? Here's what's going on in our world. How do we work together to kind of keep the process, the flow moving forward? So I think that's why a lot of people are here, as well as to see what's new. You say it was only 12 months ago, but so much changes in 12 months, right? Things today move pretty quickly. So I think people are happy to be out here and meet and talk and kind of understand where they think business is going to head in the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, you're right. A lot has changed in the last 12 months, let alone the last 2 or 3.
Yeah.
A lot of my conversations as I'm kind of walking the show floor, Ian, they talk about uncertainty. There's still optimism, though. And it's kind of a different dynamic. It's a little hard to describe, but as I think about the long road ahead here for 2025, it feels like we're still going to have a good year. We're just kind of waiting for answers to some questions at this point.
Yeah, the term we've been throwing around is cautious optimism. So everyone is still optimistic. Everyone still wants positive things to happen, and I think everyone's willing to work together to get through them. But at the same time, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of waiting. What's going to happen? What direction are we going to get turned in? And unfortunately, right now, those things are changing from day to day. It's not like a month-to-month thing. Things are changing quite rapidly, so it's not making it easy for all of us, that's for sure.
What about your customers? I mean, you think about whether it's Canada or here in the U.S., Ian, how busy are your customers at this point? I mean, I feel like the projects are there. Maybe the one difference or change from when we sat down 12 months ago at AGG1 is that I feel like there's maybe more concern about the private market because interest rates are still a problem. We heard about some of that this week at the NSSGA annual convention.
Yep.
But the public market seems strong. There's committed dollars there, and it doesn't seem like that's where the concern lies, but it's more so on the private side.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's 100% true. What I think is it's very driven geographically. So there's certain areas that are growing where businesses are being built, whether it's an Amazon or another battery plant or things of that nature. So in those areas, you're seeing the money. You're seeing the infrastructure being built. You're seeing bridges. And even in those cases, you're seeing the private actually pick up a little bit because everyone who's going to come work there needs to live somewhere. So it's very geographically dependent on where that's happening. And then you have other areas that are very slow because that's not what's happening. So I think it's a bit of a mix. I wouldn't be confident in saying like, yeah, everything is good, we're all getting back to normal and it's busy. I think it's very much dependent on where that growth is happening today.
Ian, you're situated in Canada. I mean, we touch Canada with our readership at Pitt and Quarry. What notable difference, I suppose, is there right now between what the experience is for the agri producer in the U.S. versus the one in Canada?
It's pretty similar, actually. There's not much variance. I think, again, it's very dependent on where you're located. Weather plays a big factor into that, right? So, but that applies on both the U.S. and the Canada side. It's very North American driven. So there's a lot of commonalities, more commonalities than there are differences. So for us, it's not a difference in structure or how we go to market. It's pretty much identical the same.
Do you sense, too, maybe shifting just to what mindsets might be here at the show is, we are seeing some decision makers on the floor. A lot of the big name agri-producing companies are present here at AGG1. Are they ready to buy? I mean, you mentioned earlier they want to know what's going on. They've got questions. They want to know where you guys are at as a manufacturer. I guess what's their readiness, their state of readiness to go ahead and make their next purchases, make the next wave of purchases?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. And what we're seeing is there's the stuff that they know about that's for sure going to happen within the year, and that they're planning. Interest rates are still pretty high, right? So everyone is being very careful with their spending, with their budgets, how much they're borrowing, and how much they're planning, if you will. So there is two kind of systems that I see happening. Those who can plan and can afford to plan want to plan, right? You want to kind of take out any of those challenges of last-minute issues, lead times, inventory, so they're planning. But there's also the other side of that where the industry is very much becoming like a just-in-time type situation. So it's because interest rates are high, we're not borrowing money to buy and put things in stock and hold. So we're using what we have until the moment that it fails or close to failing, and then we're going to buy what we need right away, and we need it right away. So that's making it a different dynamic, right? And it really puts the manufacturers of any of the products here in a situation of it's not so much about do I have it right now? If I do or if I don't, can I get it to the customer in the timeline that he requires it? So how quickly can you turn that process around? So there's two variables going on there. Some are planning and some are really just in time.
Yeah. Now you use that phrase just in time. I feel like I haven't heard that in a few years even. I almost feel like the whole supply planning equation changed after COVID.
Yeah.
And we went to more well thought out, orchestrated planning on the capital equipment side.
Yeah.
And I think probably from what I gather at the manufacturing level, they got comfortable, they adjusted to that, and they largely seem to be pleased with where things are today. So just to kind of get a hold of what you're trying to say a little bit further, Ian, do you think that we're going to be moving more toward a just-in-time model, or you're talking about two different types of buyers, I guess. I wonder, are we going to shift back to that pre-2020 style of going about buying things?
Yeah, I don't see them as shifts back and forth. Again, I think there are many different customers, different sizes of customers, those who can afford to do one thing and those who can't, right? Some have broken out monthly budgets, some have no requirement and they have kind of spend at their hand and they kind of have a little bit more versatility to do certain things. So I think it's just a matter of the customer. I think it's the size of the customer. Like you said, supply chain is such a huge component of everyone who's here at AGG1. This is not specific to screen media or yellow iron or any of it. It's everybody. Supply chain is key. So I think it's going to be a combination of do we have a solid supply chain, and then if there's a disruption or if there is an issue, how do we deal with that and can we react quickly and efficiently? So you really have to have two processes, in my opinion.
We are joined now by Dan Caine, Managing Director of the Measure Group at Wingfield Scale. Dan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jack.
So we are here on the last day of AGG1 in St. Louis, just a mere few hours left of AGG1 2025. I know we were talking a little bit before we went live here. What are your thoughts on the show so far?
I'm here with a colleague, our general manager, and we have both discussed day to day, almost hour to hour, what we're thinking. And I would say in our line of sight, back over in the 7,000 series booths, we love the venue, we love the opportunity. We've invested kind of heavily in the last 5 years in creating a better booth space, a better presentation. When you walk up, you understand what we do. That's challenging for us because we do a whole array of things. Scale company first, turned inventory company using scales, and then survey company with a primary focus on surveying for value, surveying for stockpile measurements, etc. And we've had customers tend to stretch you geographically and vertically. If you can do this, can you do this? So with regard to the show, we feel like we have engaged a different level within the companies. These are guys that use the products, that use the equipment, and they tend to say, my boss needs to see this. Whereas maybe other shows are more the management level, and they are decision makers.
Great.
But you get a mix of all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been very energetic and very busy. Yeah.
Great. So I know you're obviously busy sort of or maybe not running, but being a part of the Wingfield scale booth. But, is there anything that maybe you've seen on the show floor or heard about from attendees as far as equipment and technology developments go that have kind of stuck out in your mind so far?
Well, they would be the things that are connected kind of to what we do. So there's always an awareness of potential competitors and or where the technology is leading. So we tend to be, even as a scale company and a survey company, near the edge of what's happening with technology. My team works a lot with LiDAR, for instance, and the applications of that kind of technology are what's changing. LiDAR's been around for a long time. Photogrammetry's been around for a long time. But the applications and the way you use those tools changes all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
You look up every 6 months and something, you have to adapt.
All right, and we are joined by Nick Roseto, Business Development Manager.
Not quite, just business development.
Just business development with Dodge Industrial. Nick, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Much appreciated.
So, we're about halfway through AGG1 here, where we're speaking at our booth here at the show. Through the first day and a half or so, how's the show been treating you guys? What are your thoughts on St. Louis?
The show has been great. Always starts out a little bit slow right when the first couple hours or so, but after that it really starts to pick up on the first day, and foot traffic through the booth has remained very strong. People are interested in the products, people are interested in the solutions, and just overall, anything that helps them do their jobs better and become more profitable is really interesting for them. So, Dodge manufactures bearings, gear reducers, and mechanical power transmission components, and a lot of those individual pieces are used in production plants. So people are coming by and seeing things and liking what they see. Excellent. And that's great. And I like St. Louis. I'm here quite a bit through work, and I think it's a really, really good venue. Solid, spacious, a lot of folks here, more interesting equipment, more people to talk with, more networking. It works out really well.
Fantastic. So from what you've been hearing from people coming to your booth, or I don't know if you've been able to kind of explore the show floor at all yourself, are there any equipment and technology developments at this show here that have kind of stuck out or caught your eye so far?
Well, there's a whole lot of different things, especially I think in our industry, one of the more interesting things is technology involving Internet of Things, digital sensors, things like that take the old style of maintenance where you were more reactive and switches it over to predictive, so that when equipment's going to fail, you have a plan and you have a time frame when you can actually go and replace equipment to put aside the dreaded unplanned downtime at $10,000, $25,000 an hour for some of these production facilities. That technology always interests me, but I think one of the things we can't forget is some of the old technology that have worked for years and years and years. Belted shaft mounts. For folks that are interested in efficiency gains or safety improvements, and they don't want to use belts, there's solutions there now with direct drives in the same type of format and package. And even with mounted bearings as well. Mounted bearings have been around for a lot of years, but some of the tweaks that we put into designs and so forth are a little bit different for us, but they effectively provide solutions to customers who have had continuing problems in production facilities, such as how do we grease a bearing? Well, if you get a bearing with 100% grease up front, then your chances of maximizing your service life really start to increase as well. So things along the lines of that are always interesting to me, and not just Dodge components, but just all the different vendors and things they've got. So.
Well, thanks again to all our guests today. Again, that was Jamie Jones, John Scepaniak, Thabiso Bolebano, and Clement Cazalot sitting down together. We also had with us Josh Swank, Ian Edwards, Dan Caine, and Nick Roseto. Guys, appreciate you visiting with Jack Kopanski and I. Always great to sit down and hear some perspective. And again, Jack, just like we were kind of saying at the start of the show, great overall experience in St. Louis. I think people felt very good about what they took away, and you kind of hit on it in your commentary in the beginning. I think maybe expectations were set low, or maybe so low or unfairly low going into the show that my takeaway from AG1 2025 was strong, and just great to see everybody. It always energizes me getting to a show like that. I know that the uncertainty was something we heard some of our guests talk about. You probably heard some of that sentiment on the show floor as well. But overall, I think people feel really good about the industry at large as we're sitting here at the start of the second quarter. And I think there's a lot to be positive about, some things to watch. But again, going to a show like that, it's just a really great opportunity for us as a magazine to kind of take a pulse on how the industry is faring. And by and large, I think we're doing pretty well. But we just need to get some answers to some questions out there that should hopefully be coming sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the wording you used there when sort of talking about the show is spot on. I do think there were some sort of unfair expectations of the city and the show that I definitely think were blown out of the water. But yeah, no, it's just such a great opportunity for us to be able to take this podcast on the road at these shows. We've been at, I believe, sort of 3 big ones now: AG1 last year, Mine Expo last year, and now this AG1, as well as some stuff here and there. And doing it at our roundtable as well. But it's just such a great opportunity, like you said, to not only get the pulse of the industry, but it's, these guys are fresh off the show floor. They're fresh off of seeing either what they're looking for, maybe some stuff they weren't looking for, but stuff that caught their eye from a manufacturer's perspective. They're hearing from potential customers. So it's just such a great opportunity to really pick these guys' brains when it's fresh. And, not to say that it's any worse when we're sitting down maybe a week or two after, but, it's right on the top of their minds. And I think that it just really adds to the context and adds to the value that a show like this can bring.
From a content standpoint for the magazine, for our digital products, Jack, I mean, AG1 is fantastic. We probably did a dozen or more interviews. So the ones we played today were just a portion of what we pulled out of the show across 3 days. Our digital editor Marie's already cut a few videos based on some sit downs with Jack and I, so you can look for those on pitandquarry.com, and we've got some fuller length interviews coming based on sit downs with Jack. Jack's going to get into one of those toward the back end of the show, offering a preview, but again, just a really good opportunity for us to gather content, and some of that stuff we'll be putting into the pages of the May issue of the magazine and beyond. So really just a good use of our time as a staff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, we haven't even mentioned, but in St. Louis last week, we actually enshrined our 2025 class. It was the 10th induction ceremony in the history of the Pit and Quarry Hall of Fame, and it's a black tie event. We're not a black tie industry, I suppose, but we do get dressed up and honor the best of our industry, and we did that March 24th at the Marriott St. Louis Grand, and our 2025 class was comprised of Gerry Bauer, Ron DeDiemar, Tom Hill, and Edgar B. Symons. We were fortunate to have Gerry, Ron, and Tom with us. Edgar B. Symons passed away in the mid-20th century, but we were fortunate to have Jeremy Polson and Fernando Moya on hand from Mezzo to accept the Hall of Fame honor on behalf of Edgar B. Symons. And, Jack, I was on stage and behind stage for part of it, so I couldn't fully hear everything behind stage when induction speeches were being delivered, but we heard a lot of people come up to us at the show after the fact, thanking us for putting that event on. And it's important to celebrate our wins and celebrate the best of our industry. So somebody in the audience, I guess, what did you pull away from I guess this would be your third or fourth ceremony?
Yeah, my third one. Very exciting. First off, once again, congratulations to Gerry, Ron, Tom, and Edgar. I mean, this is just such a strong class top to bottom. You've got a good variety of guys, and just real guys that have made a real impact on this industry, and it's great to see them recognized. So yeah, I mean, always great to hear from them in their induction speeches, sort of to hear their story or to hear what helped get them to this point. Hearing from Jeremy in lieu of Edgar was a unique experience. And I gotta say, I pat you, Dino, our cohort, Diane Sofranic, all on the back for the work you guys did in trying to find as many photos of Edgar as possible. We ended up with not any, unfortunately, but you guys really busted your butts trying to find that, and that is not an easy task to do. So I commend you all on that. But
if anybody out there has
if anybody has Edgar B. Symons
photo, we'll take it.
Absolutely. No, but yeah, just overall, I consider myself really lucky that my first 3 Pit and Quarry Hall of Fames have been such strong classes, and this one is no exception. Gerry, from his work in wear parts, Ron DeDiemar has patents and trademarks out the wazoo. Tom Hill at Vulcan is one of the core names in our industry right now, and Edgar Symons. I mean, Jeremy mentioned it in his speech. You talked about it in your article. It was talked about in the video we did. Everyone at some point has used a Symons crusher. It's just inevitable. I was even looking through some old photos yesterday, and about half of them I saw that had crushers on them were Symons crushers. So it was just kind of a cool thing. So just a very exciting night, a very special night for our industry. I want to give one quick shout out to our friend Ben Black at Geologic for probably being the best dressed of the night in a red. I don't know if it was velvet or if it was suede. It was the nicest.
Looked snazzy though.
It was the nicest tuxedo I've ever seen. So Ben, keep it up. That was a great suit. But yeah, now it's crazy. It feels like just yesterday we were talking about the 2024 class with the other Tom Hill, Neil Heiss, and everyone that made up that class. But now we're already talking about looking for the class of 2027. So you've got a couple years to get your nominations in. So get them going now.
Yeah. As AGG1 shifts to New Orleans in 27, the Pit and Quarry Hall of Fame will also return. We don't do the Pit and Quarry Hall of Fame induction ceremony in ConExpo years. Next year, 2026, is a ConExpo year, but we'll be back in New Orleans in 27. And between now and then, I would encourage everybody in the industry to think long and hard about somebody who belongs in the Pit and Quarry Hall of Fame. And you can easily make a nomination by going to our dedicated Hall of Fame website. That's pitandquarryhalloffame.com. Just submit name, company, title, and description essentially of anybody that you want to submit, and we've got a selection committee that reviews all nominations and ultimately determines who gets inducted to that Hall of Fame. But again, to echo Jack again, congratulations to Gerry, Bauer, Ron DeDiemar, Tom Hill, and Edgar B. Symons on your enshrinement as members of the 2025 class. Well, what else is happening in Pit and Quarry? Well, I just got our first copy of the April edition on my desk this week. Jack, I'm sure you got yours as well on yours.
Absolutely.
We've got some Pit and Quarry Roundtable 2025 coverage in there. So if you were at the event and you want to see yourself in our April edition, or if you weren't and you want to see what transpired there, I'd encourage you to pick that up, as we've got a dedicated pull-out supplement to all things Pit and Quarry Roundtable and Conference. We're actually just starting to work on our May edition. We will have a crushing and hydraulic braking supplement in that, and some Hall of Fame coverage as well. So more fodder about our 2025 class can be found there as well. We'll also have a story about a Blue Water Industries operation that I visited in recent weeks. They've got a new wash plant, and I'll be putting the spotlight on that and how that came to be in Florida. So just lastly, wanted to talk about our next episode, Jack. And again, you pulled an interview out of the show floor at our booth with a partner company, and tell us what we can hear on the April 22nd edition of Drilling Deeper.
Yeah, no, it was very exciting. I got the chance to sit down with actually two of our partner companies to sort of plan out a couple of future episodes, but more specifically, the next episode that you will find, episode 39, is with Weir. I got a chance to sit down with Peter Brewitt and Magnus Skorvald with the company. Peter is global product manager for sand and washing plants, and Magnus is global product manager for crushers. And we talked about a wide range of stuff. Talked about some of the current trends that they're seeing in the sand and aggregate market in North America, the role that Weir plays in those markets, and sort of the presence it has in the sand and ag market, the latest equipment and technology developments the company has, including Enduron screens, Sandmaster wash plants, Next Intelligence solutions, so much more. And then also finally, they hit on some of their sustainability issues. That's a big focus for them. So definitely kind of cool to see how they're interweaving that into their sand and aggregate washing. So definitely a great episode you're not going to want to miss. Again, I feel like I say it every time I do one of these episodes, but every time it's true. These guys have forgotten more than I'll ever know, and I mean, they are just about 10 times smarter than me in this stuff, so you're definitely going to want to hear from them as they provide a lot of good insight into what Weir is doing and the sand and aggregate market as a whole. So definitely a good sit down, and happy to do it at AGG1, a unique experience in that way.
We'll look forward to hearing that sit down with Jack and representatives from Weir. Jack, anything else to leave our listeners with here today?
No, just thank you for listening. If you stopped by the booth, it was good seeing you. We'll see you at Con Expo, and then we'll see you in New Orleans after that.
Yeah.